Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for our third live stream with Mr. Wong's Lullaby. It's great to come back this week, and we've got some brilliant guests again, so we're absolutely delighted to have a chat with them. I hope you've all had a lovely week and weekend. We're only on Tuesday. And I hope you've all had a touch of spring in the air. There is a little bit of a blue sky and a little bit of a stretch in the day, as we say in Ireland. So I hope you've all managed to get some fresh air this week. And just to remind you that these live sessions are part of the campaign for Mr. Wong's Lullaby, which is a short film that is being co-produced by myself and Annie Swinburne. We are Rookie Films, and we are indeed rookies. And we're running an Indiegogo campaign to raise funds for Mr. Wong's Lullaby, which is a short film. It's about ordinary people with ordinary lives and the little daily battles that they have to go through, and the kindness of strangers that can be a real saving grace when you're going through hard times. Our protagonist, Nora, is a social worker who is caring for her elderly father who has dementia. So it's a really sweet story. We're on the cusp of going into production. We've got a brilliant team, we've got a brilliant cast, and we've got a brilliant group of supporters behind us. So we'd love if you would support us if you can. You can follow us on social media. We're at Mr. Wong's Lullaby. You can find our Indiegogo campaign if you look up on Indiegogo Mr. Wong's Lullaby or Rookie Films. And if you want to make a donation, brilliant. If you can't make a donation, that's fine. If you can just follow us and share the campaign or spread the word about what we're doing, that would be greatly appreciated. So this evening, I've got two fantastic guests. The first guest I have is Jenny Hockey. We're delighted to have Jenny with us. She's one of our ambassadors. Jenny is, well, I struggled with this last week, the pronunciation of emeritus. I think I managed to get it right, but I'm sure, yet again, if I get it wrong, someone will correct me. So we have Emeritus Professor Jenny Hockey, who is a Sheffield-based poet and anthropologist. Now retired from the University of Sheffield as Emeritus Professor of Sociology, Jenny is reinventing herself as a poet and has had a collection published by Oversteps Books in 2019 called Going to Bed with the Moon. When Jenny's not writing poems or going to workshops, she's to be found pedaling her bike slowly up some hill or other, or in the cinema. This is Jenny's second life in Sheffield. She came back to Sheffield in 2003 and she met her old friend Anni, who was once a neighbour and a sister consciousness raiser in their women's group. Since then, Jenny and Anni have both been getting on with creative writing, and having given up Jenny's day job, she now has the opportunity to spread her writing wings. She is a supporter of Rookie Films, and she is a great ambassador for us. Jenny's had a book published in 2018, which was with Carol Komaromi. I think I've pronounced that correctly, but you'll let me know. This is called Family Life, Trauma and Loss in the 20th Century, The Legacy of War. And a forthcoming book is A Kind of Haunting, Personal Accounts of Parental Bereavement. I'll pop Jenny's website up there so you can check out some of her work. And without further ado, I'll let Jenny come on and speak for herself. Hello, Jenny, how are you?
Hello, Claire. Good to be here tonight.
Great to see you. Thanks for joining us. So, Jenny, I think we have a slight delay, but we'll do our best to get through anyway. So, Jenny, you are one of the ambassadors for Mr. Wong's Lullaby. We're very lucky to have you. Can you tell us a little about your journey from academia to creative writing? How did that come about for you in the past few years?
I think it was, in a way, the writing has been going on for a long time. I entered some poems back in 1985 for a collection that the Raving Beauties put together called No Holds Barred. I'd just been sort of toying with a little bit of writing. I had a friend who was doing some on a course, and she showed me her poems, and it made me feel like having a go at it. Anyway, 2 of my poems got into the collection, which felt like, ooh, goodness me, maybe this is something I can do. So I've sort of kept on a kind of, that sort of thing where you're doing something on the side but don't give up the day job feeling, and kind of never had a real sense of how far I could take it, and what would be possible for me while ever I was in this, really quite demanding job as an academic and researcher and so on, and endlessly writing academic pieces. So in the end, slightly before the official retirement age, severance deal came up, and I just decided that I would really like to sort of shift from, if you like, one project, which is academic research, to this newer project, which is really sort of being able to give myself over to the writing in a much more full-time way.
Fantastic. Wow. And Jenny, we spoke on Zoom and on the phone before about some of your work and big interest that you had in, I suppose, in the nature of old age and end of life and how we view that in society. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that would be quite interesting, especially for anyone who's come to this through Mr. Wong's Lullaby, which does deal with, old age. What's your background with that?
It started as part of my undergraduate degree, actually. I was lucky enough to do an anthropology degree at Durham, where even, as an undergraduate, it's still seen as quite junior, but you were actually allowed for your dissertation to go out and talk to people. And I'd done a fairly traditional anthropology degree where you study the lives of traditional people, people sort of, living much closer to the everyday world of, food and subsistence and so on and so forth. Societies that often had quite elaborate rituals, and often death ritual was the most elaborate of the rituals you'd find in a society like that. So the anthropologists were a bit disciplined. Nobody done, they couldn't witness that ritual. Anyway, when it came to me thinking about my dissertation, I think this was sort of back in the late 70s, mid 70s, and I think there was a movement building at that time. We said, what's happened in the West? We don't seem to be able to deal with death. We push it away. We want professionals to deal with it for us. We have a kind of model of bereavement where, you have to go through these stages and achieve closure and move on with your life and let the dead go and all of that. So I think partly that was sort of creeping in. And so I just, as an anthropologist, I wanted to find out, what were the beliefs and practices of people around me. So, as I say, I was, fortunately supported to do that kind of dissertation, and it just became so gripping. And people were very interested in what I was doing and would want to hear about it. So it just kind of launched, and I did a PhD, which was, I think the people I interviewed, because I was young at the time, in some ways was sort of, it wasn't, I think, something that they felt was immediate. And I wanted to talk to people for whom death was much more something that was coming around the corner. And I wanted to talk to older people. So it took me into a residential home for elderly people, and that's where I did the majority of my PhD. And I also worked in a bereavement support organisation and in a hospice. So that sort of laid this foundation of interest in that area. And then I carried on. I've done projects on, because in a way, in challenging all of that, hiding death away and not talking about it, in the years since the 70s, I think we have got more open. And for one thing that I looked at was the way that people now, after a cremation, it's not uncommon to actually remove the ashes and people invent their rituals. And I mean, you only have to go online to see all the extraordinary things people are doing with ashes these days. Yeah, so I think things have changed in that way. A natural burial has come in. So this idea of, instead of the elaborate gravestone that everybody's got to maintain, sort of, the body goes back into a field or a woodland and so on. So I think my work has sort of, as it happened, has coincided with a period of great change in the way that we think about death and what we actually do. So that's
Wow.
where I got to, as it were.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I know, coming from Ireland, as with many things in Ireland, there's usually a sort of a 3-day event around it, whether it's weddings or baptisms, but certainly funerals. The wake and the process of bereavement is it's very important to Irish people. There's an element of certainly celebration, celebrating of the life, but also a time for everyone to come together and whether you're a man or a woman, young or old, everyone can shed a tear or laugh or express themselves in whatever way. There's no shame around it. And I think it's something that's, I suppose, sometimes it can feel a bit lacking in society, that, when it comes to death and bereavement, that it's sort of like, as you said, it's given to someone else to deal with, given to professionals, rather than allowing a family to do it in their way. And it's, the old saying lies true. 2 things in life are certain: death and taxes. But we seem to, on an annual basis, deal with taxes pretty readily, whereas death we'll just put in the corner for as long as we can.
And I do think that has what you've just said has been recognised, and people have looked elsewhere in other parts of the world, or indeed within Irish worlds and so on, and started to do things differently. I don't think we can speak generally, say we hide it away, nor can we say generally that we're much better and more open. But I think that there's much more diversity now in how people respond.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating. And we spoke a little bit as well before about your the book that you had published in 2018, which was Family Life, Trauma and Loss in the 20th Century, The Legacy of War, which you explained to me in your own words what this book was about, which I found absolutely fascinating. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Thank you. Yes, in a way, when I started all this work, there was a sort of link with my own history. When my grandfather died, I was 9, and I was sort of encouraged not to cry and get upset. I wasn't taken to the funeral, and so on and so forth. So there was a kind of personal backstory. But then you research and you're talking to other people, and I think what's been possible, and very much with the encouragement of Carol Kamarami, is now we're not part of the university, sort of keep up a particular professional facade, that we've chosen to be much more personal about issues related to death and dying. So the book we wrote together is Carol telling the story of her father and how the war affected his life and the life that followed on, which of course links with Mr. Wong, with the story of Mr. Wong's Lullaby and Horace and the war. And Carol's story was about her father who'd been there very Wilson and was hugely traumatized and prepared for what he saw there when they opened the camp, and how that had sort of fed right through his life when he hadn't been able really to talk about it at all, and how she opened it up, and in a sense to write the book, to tell the story, he had always felt he had to keep quiet about. Their story really was growing up much in the shadow of 2 world wars. So father had lost both his own father, so effectively never knew him, because he died in World War I when my dad was I think he was under 4. And then his one other sibling, his brother, died in the Second World War. And then his mother died shortly after. So, there was just sort of nobody there on that family. And in a way, it's only with hindsight we start to think he'd been sent away to boarding school, and I think that had made him sort of, that he didn't sort of really engage in a warm and easy way. So it was really putting those two stories together, and so it's odd to tell a family history that isn't just one family, but we managed to make it work, and we sort of took it chronologically. It was happening at different ages in the 20th century for our two families.
Wow.
As I say, so it came out with Palgrave. It's an academic. We tried to write it perhaps in a personal way than we would have written as academics. So it's not loaded down with references and so on and so forth. It's very much we took a chance to tell our story.
So it's the kind of book that the average Joe Soap non-academic person
Are we getting on all right
into.
with the delay on the sound? Or
I think so. There's a slight delay, but hopefully, if you can still hear me, I can still hear you.
Yes, and I mean, yeah, it's fine. Yes, and if you could get it from a library or get a library to buy it, because it's an academic book, so it's not. Unfortunately, it's not as cheap as the sort of standard books off the shelf. But yeah, anyway, that was a chance to be more personal. Do you want to talk about the book that's forthcoming?
Yeah, I'd love to. So this book that's forthcoming is A Kind of Haunting, personal accounts of parental bereavement, when is this due for publication? Jenny, I think you've frozen.
It will be
no,
out sometime this year, and this is a book that Carol and another academic. Okay, right. So this is a book that Carol Kamarami and Carol academic have edited together, and it's a collection again of people who've researched death and dying through their academic lives, and are now taking an opportunity to actually reflect on their own experiences of bereavement. So I wrote while I was looking after my dad towards the end of his life. This is back in '96. I wrote a kind of personal account to kind of record what had happened myself. I just stuffed it away because it seemed far too personal at that stage. And then when I showed it to Carol, it sort of inspired her to put this anthology together and to ask other death studies academics if they would be prepared to share a personal story. And so that's what's gone into these books. But again, it links with Nora's experience, the daughter, who's struggling with a very challenging social work job while at the same time having a dad who really needs somebody with him because of dementia. And similarly, I was sort of in a very sort of full-on stage of my career, only child of a dad who's really quite ill, and I felt this kind of awful tension and the sort of feeling that how can you put a job in the frame when somebody's at the very end of their life? Surely they have to come take over. And yet, like Nora, really, I felt very committed to the job I was doing. And so there's a sort of feeling of shame and that you're letting somebody down. I find things like Mr. Wong's Lullaby very reassuring, really, that the way we organise ourselves does put people and put carers into these terrible sort of dilemmas as to where to give their energies.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? The nature of being a carer can be a complicated one. Not all carers are saints or angels. You know, most of them are just human beings with their own lives that they're living, as well as looking after someone who they may have a wonderful relationship with, or they may have a slightly more complicated relationship with, but nevertheless, you know, it has to fall on their shoulders at that time. And it's not always like the kind of Hollywood story, with everyone coming out smiling at the end and everything wrapping up nicely with a little bow. But I think it's important.
And in a way, the two stories sort of, I was going to say the two stories intersect, you know, but because in a sense the legacy of war was somebody very close to me, you know, so somehow that sort of being driven by your heart, it wasn't really quite like that. It was, you know, much more a sort of worry and a bit of a sense of duty, really, and that felt uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, of course, but it's good if you can highlight this in, I suppose, in books, in poetry, in art, in film, and show a slightly more honest human portrayal of this type of experience, which, you know, I think we've certainly tried to do with Mr. Wong's Lullaby, and I know that it's something that you've strived to do as well in your own work, is to just be honest about the situation. And that book is, when is that due for publication, Jenny, did you say? When can people get a hold of that?
Well, yeah, they haven't got it yet, but it will be, you know, it's still in production, so it will be at some point later in this year.
Okay, so imminently, hopefully. All going according to plan. And Jenny, something that you spoke to me about as well that I found really interesting was, and I know you're going to explore this with one of the poems you're going to read, but it was a childhood experience of being introduced to spiritualism, and a lovely quote that you gave me was that thing as a child of when you walk into the room and all the adults' voices drop and you go, oh God, I'm hearing something I probably shouldn't hear now, which I think is something that most people can resonate with.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I think because I did work in the, you know, what we came to call death studies for a long time. So, I mean, for example, it involved interviewing an exorcist who was a minister of the church, and you know, I was writing quite a lot about ghosts and people's beliefs about the afterlife and people's sense of the dead being close at hand or not. It took me a long time to realise that, of course, that was very much part of my growing up, that mother had this real strong interest in spiritualism. And there was one particular point where this sort of rather distant friend, I think he'd been married to a friend of my mum's, Mr. Spearing, sort of came over the horizon, and he used to come round our house rather a lot. And I think, and they had these very intense conversations about, you know, the other side. But I think she also found him a bit, you know, she wasn't quite sure what his motives were. And he used to bring me lots of presents, which of course was like, ooh, didn't get many in those days. So I wrote a poem. She also was an artist, and she painted landscapes and flowers and so on, but she had a spell where she took up painting sort of religious scenes, sort of crucified Christs and so on. So I mean, and in a way, I think as a child, these things are just all in the mix, and perhaps only later you think, you know, it's kind of what odd life I live now, but I'd obviously found its way into my academic interests and indeed my poetry.
Wow, it's amazing what kind of stays with you from your childhood. I mean, you know, some quite strong not even like memories, but feelings as well, you know, that you carry with you that maybe resurface a lot later.
Yes, atmospheres.
Definitely. And Jenny, you were going to read for us this evening a couple of poems that you've written. So I'm sure people would love to hear those. What I'll do is I'll drop out of the screen, so I'll hand the stage to you, as it were. And if you want to, feel free to talk a little bit about the poems that you're going to read, and I'll pop out and then I'll pop back in whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I've chosen 2 poems to read tonight. And the first one relates to this, if you like, diary or record I wrote to sort of document the period when my dad was ill and eventually dying. The book, a kind of haunting. But I also took some of the phrases from that diary and wrote this poem. So I suppose you could almost call it a prose poem, but it sort of charts the key feelings. So I'll begin by reading that, and then a slightly more light-hearted one about the spiritualism. Diary notes for the holiday. Flattened throughout July, at times depressed, hard to form a smile, overworked, desperate to go away. What about justice? Is there no end to demands too costly to meet? Is there no one to say when a break is due? Must take the holiday. Late July, and someone's worried about his jacket is hanging. He is confused. His neighbour confirms. His doctor suspects malignancy. He has broken his appointment on June the 3rd, along with 2 more. Cigarettes and gin and tonic from the bar. Quickly! Why am I sailing so far away from someone who is likely to leave me altogether? Watch the shoreline recede, the deepening of waters. This holiday is madness. We do not carry a mobile phone. Approach the Burgundy village and contact. Is he already dead? The wrong phone number was left. But he is alive and angry. Someone passed on information. Someone said he was ill and phoned his doctor behind his back. Leave for Rully. 15 weeks later, and he is dressed in something blue, Anni, which connects directly to the coffin sides. A coverlet posing as a garment. His hands are visible again, now utterly familiar. The red marks on their backs, left behind by the tubes. Okay, and then this is going back a long time to when I was, maybe it was about 9. And we kept guinea pigs, all right, 2 pet guinea pigs. They lived in the shed at the bottom of the garden. And on my way home from school, I used to go along the grass verges and heave up sort of big handfuls of grass for them. So they were always waiting for me. But then there was this kind of other stuff going on. So, Jesus with guinea pigs. There's always something to be done in our house. But in between, my mum gets out her paints, finishes another Jesus, and props his wounded body hanging there as I walk in from school, fists clutching roadside grass, grubbed up for Ginger and Bobby Charlton, squeaking their heads off in the shed. Always that quiet conversation going on. Something about the other side. Evidence of uncles have crossed over. And Mr. Spearing. The worry of his gifts. Thank you.
They were beautiful, Jenny. Thank you very much for sharing those with you. Are they available to see on your website or in your anthology of poetry? I think we've frozen again. Can you hear me, Jenny?
Oh. Still frozen?
No, you're back. You're moving. So where can people find those poems if they wanted to read them in their own time?
Yeah, Just with Guinea Pigs appeared in the poetry magazine The North, which I was very pleased to have it published in. Can't quite tell you let me see. It would be in one of the 2020 issues of The North. And the other one, I think, appeared in a book published by the Open University, which is where, sorry, I didn't mention, but that's where Carol worked as an academic before she retired. Produced
okay.
a lot of books. Sorry, I should absolutely have mentioned that. And they produced a lot of material about death, dying, and bereavement. And I think this poem was included in one of their anthologies.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. So if anyone wants to have a look, they can have a look on, I've just put it in the comments. And also I've got Jenny's website up at the bottom there where you can read a bit more about Jenny. Are you writing a lot at the moment, Jenny, or has lockdown for you been a time of creative fruition or for baking sourdough?
No, my husband.
Nice.
No, it's been good. No, it's been very good. One thing I've done is kind of over the years, if you're writing regularly, you accumulate lots and lots of poems, and you don't necessarily know which ones are going to kind of work out, and you sort of feel like you've got. Anyway, I've sorted them out, and I've put quite a lot of them aside, and chosen the ones that I feel have promise, and sent them off to magazines. And I sort of feel, yeah, I suppose you could say on top of all of that, and let a bit of air into the whole process, I think. So no, it's been really good. And I've enjoyed just having mornings writing and getting on with it.
Nowhere
Lots
to
of
go,
workshops on Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Thank God for Zoom. Although, to be honest, I think some of us are feeling like once we get out of this, we won't want to see Zoom for a while. We'll need a Zoom detox. Brilliant as it has been. Fantastic. Great. Well, thank you so much, Jenny. It's been lovely to have you on this evening, and fascinating to hear about your work. And I hope there's some food for thought there for people regarding the whole idea of, thinking about aging and end of life. Maybe it's nice to see it from a different perspective, and certainly it's something that we could all do with thinking about more, and bringing into conversation with a bit of levity and humor, because it is, death is part of life, so might as well embrace it and make it our own. And thank you again, Jenny, for your support for Mr. Wong's Lullaby. It's greatly appreciated, and you've been a wonderful ambassador for us. And your respect for the film is hugely appreciated as well. So sooner rather than later, we'll be up and running with production, and hopefully the final product will be something that everyone involved can be proud of.
I'm sure. Well, it's been wonderful to be in. Thank you very much for giving me this half hour to talk about myself. It's a great treat. Thank you.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much, Jenny. And for anyone who wants to watch this back, everything that's up this evening, along with our previous sessions, will be available to watch back on Facebook and on YouTube afterwards. So please do go and look up Jenny's website and find out more about her writing and her work. She's a fascinating person. Thank you very much, Jenny. See you soon.
Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, thanks again to Jenny for joining us this evening. I'm sorry if there was a little bit of a delay. I don't know if it was just on my side or not, but this is the nature of technology and live streaming and life under lockdown. So we are going to be shortly bringing on the wonderful Emma Saville. Emma is a singer-songwriter based in Sheffield. With her Greek and Italian roots, classical and jazz training, and myriad of musical influences, Emma's sultry music is a rich blend of soul, funk, jazz, and chill out, with Latin influences and a modern twist. Wow, I did that in one breath. Emma's music has been streamed to millions of people all over the world and is still finding new fans. Emma plays the ukulele, the piano, the guitar, and the clarinet. Having lived in Latin America for 3 years, Emma has worked with a variety of musicians and producers throughout the UK and internationally. Emma's music career began at 17 when she wrote and performed Be As One, produced by Minus Blue, aka Lee Devlin. Between 2012 and 2016, Emma was one of the lead singers of Orquesta Estelar, one of the hottest live Latin bands in London. Her new single, Out the Door, was released on December 2020, and she's currently writing her first solo album, which will be released in 2021. So we are delighted to have Emma joining us this evening, and I will bring her on now. There we are. Hi, Emma. How are you?
Hey, yeah, thanks so much for having me. And yeah, thanks to Jenny as well. That was a really interesting discussion. No, I enjoyed it. And I agree that British attitudes towards death, they're getting healthier, but they've still got, a long way to go, for sure.
Yeah, it's all work in progress. So, Emma, you're based in Sheffield. You spent some time in London, and you've also spent some time in Latin America. I mean, maybe an obvious question, maybe not, but having spent 3 years in Latin America, what brought you back here to these colder climates?
I actually got dengue fever. I was living in Brazil, for 6 months in 2019 and having the most amazing time. I was living in Salvador, which is it was the first capital of Brazil. So it's got such a rich heritage of African diaspora, like music, dance, food, any aspect of culture, you name it, as well as being an incredibly beautiful area of the world. Sadly came home to recover, and then COVID happened and I'm still here. But no, but it's good to be back in Sheffield. It is lovely to be back in a place. To be back home. So.
Oh, well, I mean, silver linings, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. And Emma, so you had a single released in December 2020, which was just before, no, at the very end of last year. I'm mixing up my years now. So during lockdown, you managed to produce and release a single. How was that experience for you?
It was good. It was the first time I'd ever released like an independent single. But I think one positive of the pandemic has been that lots of musicians have had the time and space, not always because they wanted to, because obviously people have not been able to, earn their money in their usual ways. But there has been such a wealth of music that's come out over social media, and so many more artists are releasing independent music, which is brilliant. So so I was working with a producer in the States called Chris, or it's CC Beats is his Instagram if you want to check him out. And yeah, so it was a really great process. So just recording at home in my little home studio and then doing everything else online. So yeah, and then I released another 2 singles in January called Saudade Unplugged, which I'm going to play for you shortly, and Saudade, which was a more kind of reworked studio arrangement, which is much more upbeat. So yeah.
Oh, amazing. Fantastic. And you also have an album that you're currently writing to be released in 2021. What's the name of this album, or is it as yet unchristened?
It's like every musician's like least favorite job, like choosing the name of a band or an album. So, as of yet untitled. But yeah, I'm probably just going to keep releasing singles steadily and then kind of do a retrospective album, because yeah, lots of musicians now are saying it's the best way to kind of keep engaging with audiences, because obviously if you just release one album, like, then
Yeah.
you know, whereas if you're doing singles throughout the year, it's kind of better. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, it's not like well, I think back to like my very early experience of music was, you know, going into HMV or wherever and buying the album physically.
Yeah.
And of course, it's totally different now, you know, how people are engaging with music, how people are engaging with anything really. It's a very different process. But yeah, I suppose it's drip feeding the the musical experience is a different way of doing it. And do you have something that's coming out imminently that people can keep an eye out for, or what's happening with you right now?
Yeah, so I've got 2 songs being mastered at the moment. One's called The Other Side and the other's called Nostalgia. So Nostalgia, I'm working with Mark Filmhope. He's a well-known Sheffield musician and producer who's insanely talented. So that'll be coming out in 6 weeks, hopefully. And then I've got 3 other songs kind of in the pipeline. So
Brilliant.
yeah, I think lots of musicians have found, myself included, that like being able to be creative and having music has been such a lifesaver during the pandemic, because it's kept me
There's
sane.
nothing else to do. There's nowhere to go.
Exactly.
And if baking isn't your thing. Brilliant. Well, we're delighted to have you this evening, and we are really looking forward to hearing your music. So I will hand the stage over to you. I'll let you introduce your music yourself, and I'll come back on at the end. So enjoy, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. So the first song I'm going to sing is called Not Forgetting, which I will be also releasing later this year. So there is a video of it with me singing with guitar on my YouTube, if you're interested. So just search Emma Saville music. But this is the world premiere of me singing on ukulele. So I wrote this song for my maternal grandmother, who helped teach me to play the piano and gave me a real love of music in general. And she passed. She had dementia as well, so I'm really happy to also be supporting a project with Tide, Together in Dementia Every Day. I just wrote this song several years after she passed, but in remembrance of her and the process of not forgetting. Okay, so I hope you like it. I will remember you, all the good times we shared and the bad. All the things I wish I'd asked you still float around my head. Does anyone know how much I miss you, even after all these years? You told me so much more, and for that I'm truly grateful I was yours. Whoa, whoa. They say time's a healer, and yes, I think they're right. That doesn't stop me missing you so much it robs me of breath at times. Does anyone know how much I miss you, even after all these years? You told me so much more, and for that I'm truly grateful I was yours. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Though you wished me the best of all this world could give, you said you had to leave. I said there's nothing to forgive. Life's questions I can't answer, I will love and have no fear. Hope you'll be there waiting when I get to where I'm going. Does anyone know how much I miss you, even after all these years? You taught me so much more, and for that I'm truly grateful. And for that I'm truly grateful. Yes, for that I'm truly grateful I was yours. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Thanks so much. So yeah, the next song I'm going to sing is Saudade Unplugged. Like I said, I released that on the 18th of January. You can find it on all streaming platforms, whatever's your favourite. Just search Emma Saville, or on social media, Emma Saville Music. So yeah, Saudade means, it's written in Brazilian Portuguese. I wrote it when I was living in Salvador in Brazil, and Saudade means longing, desire, missing. It's got a much kind of richer meaning than just like the missing you or nostalgia. So I felt it more fully captured the emotion that I was trying to portray. So it's talking about a past love that I decided to say goodbye to, but it's also speaking about the grieving process and kind of letting go and moving forward in a healthy way. So yeah, hope you like it. Me deixa com saudade, ainda tenho saudade. Fico com saudade de você. Hoje te vi novamente aqui. Até que ponto amar assim vale a pena? Se você não olha mais pra mim, me deixa com saudade, ainda tenho saudade. Fico com saudade de você. O sentimento ainda vive. Essa paixão marcou me derruba com palavras. Depois de tantos anos não consigo te esquecer. Me deixar com saudade, ainda tenho saudade. Fico com saudade de você. Adeus, amor, vai embora. Melhor você não me procura mais. Tenho que arrancar essa saudade de mim. Vou levar essa saudade, preciso me libertar. Tira essa saudade de mim. Vou levar essa saudade, preciso me libertar. Tira essa saudade de mim. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Emma. That was gorgeous.
Oh,
absolutely beautiful. Stunning music, and it definitely well, the second one certainly gave me a sense of sunny vibes.
Yes. Yeah, I enviously look at my friends' Instagrams every day. It's like stunning blue skies in general. So it's okay. We've had a few. The weekend was great. So,
yeah. As long as you had a coat and a hat and gloves and everything wrapped up, it was that sort of looks really beautiful outside, and then you step out and you're like, oh wow, that's fresh.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, that was absolutely gorgeous, and I find it very interesting, this idea of how you can express such completely different sentiments with a different language, that things don't necessarily translate, and the English language is beautiful, and you can express so much with it, but sometimes you look at certain things that exist within other languages, certain sentiments or ideas or concepts, and it reminds you that while we are one global village, as it were, there are very specific intrinsic sentiments that you can find if you dig a little bit deeper into the linguistics of a culture.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
So your background is quite diverse. Do you speak other languages fluently? Are you one of the lucky bi or trilinguals of the world?
So I was raised we spoke a bit of French at home when I was growing up. So my French, I'm still good at understanding and reading, but don't ask me to speak it past a kind of basic conversation. I'll embarrass myself. And then because I've spent 3 years in Latin America, I speak. It's not fluent, but it's very good. Spanish and Portuguese. And again, I speak a fair amount of Italian. I can certainly get by, but I mean, they're all Romance languages. So I think once you know kind of one or two, then it becomes easier to learn others. Yeah,
no, I know what you mean. Yeah, there's a sort of it's certainly to understand, once you've got one, you can kind of have a stab at reading another one. Yeah.
Definitely.
Oh, fantastic.
But I only write in Spanish and Portuguese because they're the two that I know the best out after English. So but no, I do really like writing music in other languages because for me, I often anchor a song to a time and place, like either how I was feeling or where I was living or both. So I think obviously if I'm in Brazil, it makes sense to be writing in Portuguese, and and vice versa if I'm here.
Totally. Yeah. No, it's lovely, and it is lovely to be able to do that, that you can express yourself in that way, that you can use the language in that way, because it can be so specific. I watched Rosamund Pike the other day, who said that her kids were teaching her Mandarin, I think, and the phrase they had taught her was a very specific phrase, which means pulling down your pants in order to fart, which essentially means doing something totally pointless. But I thought, wow, that's a really culturally specific thing to learn and to say. I'm not sure how much use it would have within our day-to-day life, but if you want to write a song about it, you heard it here first.
I'll bear that in mind.
Add it to your list. Well, Emma, it was brilliant to have you. Thank you so much for sharing 2 beautiful songs with us. And of course, as you said, the first one was about your grandmother and your relationship with her. And it's lovely to hear something really personal like that. And I've got your website is up there at the bottom, as well as your Twitter and Instagram handle. I believe that's for both at Emma Saville Music.
Yeah, and Facebook and Bandcamp,
everything
else, everything. Yeah,
just keeping it easy for us. Fantastic. So everyone, please do follow Emma. She's fantastic. Emma, do you have any, I mean, it's probably going to be vague, but do you have anything coming up that people should keep an eye out for? Are you going live on anything else, or do you have any events in the faraway future that people can keep an eye out for?
Yeah, I mean, maybe just keep an eye on my Instagram and Facebook pages. I'll post there once I've got a firm date for the next single that's coming out. And yeah, I'm always happy to connect with new artists and musicians and people who love music. So do drop me a message.
Brilliant. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Emma. I will leave you go. Have a lovely evening, and we'll speak soon. Take care.
Thanks so much. And yeah, I really look forward to seeing the film when it's out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Emma. Take care.
Bye. Have a good evening.
You too. Okay, so that was the lovely Emma Saville. So please do go and check her out. She's got some beautiful work. She's on Spotify and all the things where one might listen to things. And as I said, please do go and check out Jenny as well. She's got some wonderful stuff up there. We've got some lovely comments from this evening as well on our Facebook and YouTube feed. So thanks everyone for checking in with us. It's really lovely to have an audience, so I don't feel like I'm just speaking into the ether on my own. And please do as well, do check out Mr. Wong's Lullaby, which is essentially why I'm here this evening. So this is where you can find us. We are scrolling along the bottom there. We are at Mr. Wong's Lullaby, and if you look up Indiegogo, Mr. Wong's Lullaby, you can find us there as well. If for anyone who wanted to make a donation, who doesn't want to use Indiegogo, we do have a PayPal. So this is paypal.me/rookiefilms. Every £1, £2, £3, or whatever you've got helps. We're really excited about making the film. We're very close to reaching our target now, which is fantastic. We've got, like I said, we've got a brilliant team of people who are working with us, and it's a film that is really close to our hearts. And we hope that when we get it made, we can put it out there in the world for people to watch and hopefully spread the message a little bit further. So without further ado, I will say good evening and thank you again for joining us for our third live stream. We do have another one coming up next week. Guests TBC, not TBC, TBA, to be announced. So keep an eye on our social media and we'll be announcing them very soon. And I'll leave you with a final quote, another one from Live at Snack Time. And this is from Wesley, aged 5. Wesley asks, do you think the world is really a big TV and we're all in a TV show that never ends? So food for thought for the evening, everyone. Take care. Lots of love.